Please note that the content of this episode has explicit language and is not suitable for underage listeners. Hi, I'm CJ, and I've done phone sex for 24 years. Let's get started. I want to thank you for listening to Secrets from a Phone Sex Queen, everything you always wanted to know about phone sex and more. Please, if you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified when a new podcast is dropped. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at phonesexqueen1@gmail.com. So last week's podcast was mostly about role plays. Well, most of it was. And I want to tell you about a couple of role plays I had this week, and then we'll continue on with one of the topics of the role play. I had a new caller, and he wanted to do a role play. He didn't sound too sure as to what he wanted to talk about. Fortunately enough, he didn't ask me what I wanted to talk about, so he came up with a college student and professor scenario. The professor had to go somewhere, and so he didn't have a whole lot of time to talk to the student. The student, being me, wanted and needed a better grade to graduate or something to that effect, and so we start out where I went into his office and I tell him that I need a better grade. And what can I do? And he said nothing. I posted the grades, they're already in the system, and I said, please, oh please, what can I do? And he said he had to leave, he had somewhere to go, and please get out of my office, there's nothing more that can be done. And then he says, well, why are you sitting on my desk? And I said, well, I wanted to show you that I wasn't wearing any panties. And he said, I see that, but I need to leave. I slide off his desk and I sit in his lap. And he says, please don't do that. I need to go. What do you think you're doing? And I said, well, I'm grinding on your crotch. Can't you feel it? And he says, yes, but this is inappropriate and you need to leave. And I said, no, I don't think so. I unzip his zipper. I reach in and I pull out his cock. And I start licking it. And he's telling me to stop. And he's begging me to stop. And I say, no, I need a better grade. And he said, if I sit on his cock, he might consider giving me a better grade. And I said, well, consider doesn't mean you will. And he goes, no, I will. Just sit on it. And I get up and I straddle him and I lower myself down and I start grinding into his cock. And now he's got his hands on my hips and he begs me not to stop. And I tell him I'm not going to stop until he promises to give me a better grade. At this point, he can't help himself and he's breathing really heavily and he says, okay, I give in, I'll give you a better grade, I promise. He says, but don't stop going up and down, and what happens if I come inside you and get you pregnant? And I said, don't you worry about a thing, I'll take care of it. Takes his hands and he takes me and he bounces me up and down harder and faster, and he comes deep inside me and lets out a very loud moan. He said, well, you got your way now, didn't you? And I said, yes, I did. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'll expect to see that when? And he said, don't worry, I'll post it right now before I leave to go to where I need to go. And then he snapped out of it. He said, how fun was that? And I said, it was very fun. Thank you so much. And he said, oh, absolutely. I will definitely call you again. That was really fun. I had a good time. I liked that. It was a little bit different. Instead of him forcing himself on me, I forced myself on him. And it's a different kind of scenario. And I like that because most of mine are where the teacher is forcing themselves on me to do something. So I liked it. That was fun. I got another new caller and he also wanted to do a role play. So he says he's my neighbor and he comes over and he says he's new to the building and wanted to say hello. And I invite him in. We sit and talk for a few minutes, and he says that he finds me very attractive and gets closer to me and starts kissing me and rubbing my leg and putting his hand on my inner thigh. And I tell him that I find him attractive as well, but I'm in a relationship. And he says, well, does that really matter if the man you're in the relationship doesn't live with you? And I said, well, how do you know that? He goes, well, I hardly ever see him here. I said, well, it does matter. But he isn't here right now, so we walk into my bedroom, we're kissing and taking each other's clothes off, and we make out, and he eats me out, and I suck on him, and he asks me if I have a strap on. I say yes, and he asks if I would use it on him, and I say yes, of course. And I use it on him, and he loves it. He wants to be on his back. He wants to be on his hands and knees. And he says, please take it off, but leave it inside me. And I say, okay. And he says, I want it inside me when I fuck you. And so he fucks me with it inside of him. And he asks if it's okay if he comes inside of me. And I say yes. And he says, well, are you on any birth control? And I say no. He goes, well, what happens? And I cut him off and I said, don't worry about it. He comes inside me and he says, after kissing me, he says, it's great that we're neighbors because we can do this as often as we like. And I said, well, don't forget, I do have a boyfriend. And he said, well, when he's not here, we can play around. I said, I'm not that kind of girl, but I think I am now. And he said, and role play. Okay. I enjoyed that one as well. It wasn't as short as that, but I didn't need to go into every single ooh-ah detail. They both were really fun, both of these role plays. The second one is what I want to talk about. I had fun with these callers. They knew what they wanted, and we played it out. I was having dinner with a girlfriend the other night, and we were talking about my phone job and my podcast. One of the things I did mention to her was the second role play. I was telling her about the strap-on, and her immediate response was, oh, so he's gay. I said, no, what are you talking about? And she said, well, he wanted the strap-on up his butt. I said, that does not make a man gay. She looked at me very puzzled. Actually, I had to explain to her that more often than not, when I'm doing a role play, the man wants something to be inserted in his butt, whether it be a toy, a finger, or a tongue. Oh my gosh. She almost lost it when I said tongue. I know. People find it to be unhealthy, disgusting, gross, whatever the words are that you want to use. Oh my God. How could you possibly stick your tongue in someone's butt? Well, people do. So I was explaining to her all the nerve endings that are in your butt and how it feels good for some men wanting it to be filled, whether it's a finger or whatever, while they're being sucked on or while they're in the throes of intercourse or being jacked off. There is something that gets a man's cock harder when something is inserted in their butt. I was explaining to her that this happens on the phone more often than not. Men want this. They request it. They desire it. I often ask men if they've had this done before. Many say yes. Many say no. The ones that say no really want it. They don't know how to request it from their partners. They don't want to sound like they want to be with a man that has nothing to do with anything. It's all a matter of it feeling good. I think from what I've heard, it feels better when it happens to a man than when it happens to a woman, but that's just an opinion. I mean, I know women who have had anal sex and they don't find it comfortable. Men seem to enjoy it way more. Why? I don't know. It's just the way it is. I personally can't handle anal, but I've done it to partners and they seem to enjoy it. So the conversation kept going, and she found it just fascinating to hear how many men really want this. I kept telling her they do. Trust me, they do. So if you're a man listening to this, you should ask for it from the woman you're with. And if you're a woman, you should not be afraid to ask the man if it's something he wants, because there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean that your man wants to be with another man. Like my girlfriend finally came around and said there are many orifices that one can use besides the mouth, and so why not use them? I totally agree. And again, I'm going to say it again. This is not everyone. This is just some people. Some people enjoy this. The first thing someone thinks about, like when I was talking about a strap on, one thinks of an average size dick, or a dildo, whatever comes to mind. But in talking about toys, we've talked about toys. A butt plug is typically shaped as a cone. That can be used. There's another thing where it's kind of like anal beads, but it's harder. and the beads are either graduated by size or they're all one size. You can use that. There's all sorts of toys that one can use to put in someone's butt. It doesn't have to be a tongue or a finger. It can be anything at your local adult toy store. Start out small, work your way up. Just like with a woman, start small, work your way up. You don't want to start big. You want to start small, even if it's one finger or two fingers, whatever the case may be. Until you get used to it, you just need to start small and slow. You get used to the feeling, you stretch yourself out a little bit, and there you go. Don't be shy. Toys are fun and should be used by yourself or with a partner. It shouldn't take the place of a partner. I hate when that happens. And it's happened before where it's taken the place. I'm like, no. I want the real person, and the toy is just supposed to be enjoyed in addition to, not in place of. But that's me. Everybody's different. Trust me. Everybody has different likes. So that's why there's a lot of different toys at the adult toy store. Also, men do sometimes enjoy vibrators. I think I've mentioned this before. They like to have the vibration on their dick. It feels good to them. So whatever toy you have as a female can be used on your man as well. Open up. Have some fun. Discuss with your partner what you want, because the more you talk about it, the more you'll find out about each other, and you will have a great experience, hopefully. I know this is not for everyone, and that is totally fine. I'm not saying that it should be, that you're right or wrong not to be in this, but I just want you to keep an open mind, like I said, because people are afraid to talk about it and express how they feel and what they want. If you have not experienced it, you may want to try it, and then again, you may not. So I just want to mention that I'm not endorsing that you do this, but I'm trying to explain to keep an open mind, and having an open mind really does help. All right, well, that's enough of the bud for today. I want to thank you for listening to Secrets from a Phone Sex Queen, everything you always wanted to know about phone sex and more. Please reach out to me with your questions and comments at phonesexqueen1@gmail.com. New episodes drop every Monday. Check me out on Facebook at CJ's Podcast and Instagram at PhoneQueen1. If you're listening on YouTube, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new podcast is dropped. Until next time, stay sexy.